reached out to her and we said, hey, we have this idea. We want to do dog pirate portraits. And she basically said, I was born for this. This thought process came from Anthony Jameson. Soak it all in where you're at. You're not going to have another opportunity to do it. You ever been in the weeds at your aunt's house because all your family knows you know how to make cocktails? A mentor of mine along the way said really strong value is to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation.
Christopher Gutierrez.
Hey, what's happening? How you doing, man?
Oh, man. First off, Tater. I've never known. Where does this name come from? Your handle that I've met you as over a decade ago. What's Tater?
So they've been calling me Tater for about 20 years. Not the most flattering. They say I look like Ron White. He's had a lot of scotch over the last 20, so he's aged significantly since then. But I can say that in my early 20s, I definitely resembled him a little bit more at the time, specifically always having a little shaggy hair and whatever else there too. But, my name's Chris. I'm just looking to have a little bit more branding that's out there. It's a really disarming one too, right? And that's the whole strategy for me when it comes to these drinks we're making is I don't want you to have to be too worried about all it is that we're doing. When I tell you Tater, it's somebody that maybe your little brother's named Tater. A guy up the street that used to be named that. And they just say, some people call me Tater Tot, some people call me Taters, but it's just whatever is easy and chill and works to be part of the neighborhood.
Ron White fits, bro, because I can see it, and now I'm like tater salad. It makes sense, dude. I'm gonna have to rewatch a Ron White special because I know he said that joke a couple times, but I can't recall it. So you're doing big things in the Arts District or the Gateway District, which is like a point of confusion for me, and I know that it's kind of a point of confusion for everybody, is like, where does downtown start, where is the Arts District, and where is the Gateway District? But in general, you're within the Arts District. Yep. Straight pirate.
I think it's maybe like right on the borderline.
Okay.
Maybe Gateway District sounds a little bit less fun, but
right.
I'm going to call personally, I feel like I'd call downtown everywhere from maybe Bonanza to Sahara. It turns into county land once we get across Sahara and then into the Strip. So it's kind of just that little area that's between, maybe where the Arts District is and where the Stratosphere is I guess that's the little Gateway District over there.
Okay. So you started off, but you spent your whole career downtown, basically.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about how you ended up at Straight Pirate, but as I'm going to make a zombie that you have at Straight Pirate, I'm going to ask you what that component is after a little bit, but what was your start off? How'd you end up downtown, and where's the trajectory that led you to where you're at now?
Try to keep this as concise as I possibly could. But in the 90s, when we're going through high school, we're kind of getting our first home computers, and a lot of people maybe thought that was going to be part of life. So I remember in high school, I was just taking, CAD classes and computer science and computer graphics. As I got out of high school, I started working at the College of Southern Nevada, CCSN, we called it at the time. And one of the installers was a gentleman named Mike Ramos, who, rest in peace, we don't have Mike Ramos with us anymore, but he ran the cocktail school that was at the college. And it was next to a restaurant that was there. And it was wild because, it's like 2003, and we're setting up a whole bar with liquor that we got to taste cocktails at in this school. I was a firm believer that was like the best start I possibly could have had. We were, no joke, making mojitos with fresh lime in like pre-2005 at this college that had a kitchen. So we could just go in there and pillage the kitchen, and we'd show up and we'd set this whole bar up every single day and start making cocktails. At the time, I feel like mixology, as we use it, the term today, was kind of a little bit further off. And it's a funny thing to say that Flair bartenders were kind of the ones that were making drinks. And so if you cared about your job, you did anything that you could. And that included, hey, how am I going to care about my job a little bit more? And, maybe I knew about what 100% agave tequila was, but we were also trying to do some Flair. That's the only way we were able to develop our skill further.
I got to hold you up on that for two things. One, how much of the zombie batch did you, because this is the batch you make at Straight Pirate for
it
your,
is.
Yep. And what's in here?
So, fresh grapefruit, fresh lime, cinnamon syrup. The combination of cinnamon syrup and grapefruit makes what we call Don's Mix. Don the Beachcomber invented the drink. We make our grenadine in-house too, which is a nice little touch. And then there's some dashes of absinthe that are in there too, a little falernum.
Okay. How much do I use of the batch per cocktail?
I think we should go 2.5.
Okay.
And then as we talk a little bit further, I'm going to really just try to express how much I think that what we're doing is fun. That's why I love making tropical cocktails. Definitely spent plenty of time, tying my bow tie to make drinks. Maybe I thought that's what we needed to do to make them. But nowadays I like to maybe pepper in a dick joke here and there and make some cocktails and have fun with it. So on that note, I think we should just get real silly and make some Jaeger zombies.
Right, because you normally use it isn't Jaeger at your spot, right?
Not Jaeger at our place.
What do you use for the base there?
It's a blend of going to be Guyana rum. So Demerara sugar comes from the island of Guyana. It's its own little denomination of origin. So we're going to use something like Lemon Heart is what we use, but also Pussers would be another Demerara rum. So you're looking for Demerara with Jamaican rum, and it's stretched a little bit with like Puerto Rican, but something that's in that Spanish sort of style. So column still, barrel aged. We use something that's a little bit more Cuban in inspiration, but those rums would be that little closer combination there.
So now, why do you know this will still work? Because is this obviously something you've done before and you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a lot of buddies that are into drinking some Jaeger, and I definitely have no problem, taking off the cocktail hat for a minute and just having a good time with some Jaeger shots with my friends, because that's really what matters, right? Is hanging out here with people that you want to hang out with more so than I'm worried about what's in the cup, right?
Well, the older I get, the more I realize like these are what I'm happy doing is like. When people are like, why do you need to work? Like, why do you need to, like, it's really because I want to go out to nice dinners and have, like, nice conversations and drinks with friends and just enjoy my life that way. Obviously, like, traveling is another big part of it. But, I mean, really, my favorite thing that I can do on a weekly basis is go and have, like, a hangout with my friend at a bar that I really enjoy. How much would you put of this per cocktail?
Let's go 2.
2?
But, we're talking about allspice and anise, right? It falls right in line with the flavors of that cocktail already anyway.
So, since you were saying that you're not afraid to do a Jaeger shot, me and Kyler recently did an event, and it was for this German shoe company, and it was, I blended words.
Not the Jumans.
It was a German shoe company, and they had this really new thing where they basically 3D printed, they get a mold of your foot, they 3D print that mold, and they make the shoe to fit your foot exactly. So they're like an up and coming but like growing huge brand. And they Jaeger was like part of the sponsor for the suite at the Palms that we were hosting this event at, and they had these Jaeger what are they called? They're Jaeger. They're like.
I don't know, maybe a split.
Meisters, they're like mini Jaeger.
Mini-Meister.
Mini-Meister.
Calling them, yeah.
So it's a Mini-Meister shot, but in Germany this is a very big thing. Obviously, Jägermeister is made in Germany, and they had this really funny thing where they were showing everyone that's not familiar with Jaeger, and they're like, you take it in your mouth, and you have to close your ears, and then you listen to the glug glug of the bottle going, and they were getting such a kick out of it. So I figured we would indulge and do as the Germans do with these Mini-Meisters.
I feel like I was only able to pull that out. Shout out to Matthias, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be a fun podcast if I can ever get him on here.
Yeah.
But cheers to you, gentlemen, to the start of a fun podcast.
Cheers to all the other homies.
See how the glug glug.
This stuff.
That's right. Let's glug glug. It's quiet enough to actually hear the glug glug this time.
Sounds like a fish tank.
It does, which actually reminds me of the Straight Pirate, because if you look out like the portholes at Straight Pirate, don't they have like fish going by and stuff?
Yeah, we have this whole underwater world that for the video game enthusiasts out there, it's built in Unreal Engine.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, way cool.
So you guys created that yourself?
We worked with somebody that helped us make it.
That's so cool.
Essentially, you can kind of, some of those are maybe some digital assets that you could score and then get them animated inside of your own 3D world. But it's wild because if you're in there If you were to go zoom in on top of the ship, that you can see the sunken ship in the distance, like it's there. The planks are there. There's cannonballs on top of it. There's the entirety of a 3D world, even though we kind of only show a few little viewpoints into it.
All right, we're gonna have to come back to your trajectory since we're on it. I want to hear more about Straight Pirate.
Cool.
Because I mean, I know if you look up, it looks like you were looking up, and if you were in the hull of a ship.
Yep, that's the idea.
Which is fun. And so the concept of your bar, like officially, you said was pirate dogs or dogs and pirates.
The idea is that if you were drinking in the hull of a sunken pirate ship, we're in that little tropical tiki realm, so you have to have what's your legend, what's our story? And the story is that these pirates were out looking for treasure, and they got cursed and turned into dogs. And that pirate ship sank and sits in the bottom of the ocean. And we see the remnants of what a dog pirate ship could be. Gives us a little bit of, some nice direction, some great opportunity for inspiration. We have a drink on the menu called the Swig and Berries. We donate $1 from each one to the SPCA, original no-kill shelter here in town, but definitely just helps us out to not only that, just be silly and have a good time with it, right? That's our whole thing is, we're having a drink, we're enjoying our friends' company. Let us worry about the heavy lifting of what it means to juice grapefruits and make cinnamon syrup or bitters or anything else there, but let's just have a good time and focus on the folks that are in front of us that we're so happy to be around. And that just gave us some inspiration of some fun, lighthearted way to approach it.
Now, in an ideal world, I would have crushed more ice and have this mounding, but since I didn't do that.
I'm a firm believer when we're making cocktails, if I were to just, hate to sound so cliche and compare it to food, but I think it's, we're trying to get to a dilution level where we want to be, right?
Yeah.
I could cook eggs on a hot pan or a cool pan. It's just going to maybe take a little bit longer, a little bit less long. You can, as long as there's like a healthy little amount of ice, then you're not going to have it too watered down. But I think that's really the strategy, is just adding a little bit of water to these. I mean, they're sweet ingredients, they're strong ones. The blend of rum that we use when we're making our zombie at Stray it's 120 proof. So it definitely needs a little bit of tempering from the water that comes along with it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm pretty impressed with your rum knowledge, and I know you brought a really cool rum that we'll talk about later for the daiquiri that we're going to have.
It's a literal family heirloom.
That is the coolest thing that anyone's brought thus far. Very, very cool, and I'm honored that you're going to share that with us. And that's kind of a big thing in like the spirits world. Eric Kluver does this for me a lot too, where he shows me things that I probably would have never had if it hadn't been for him to show me, and we experience it together. And it's different than in a setting where if you go out for drinks and it's like a happening scene, sure, you're going to enjoy your drink, but you're not thinking really about your drink most of the cases, because you're talking to your friends. There's a lot of music, there's noise or whatever, so you're not like focusing in. But when you come into a setting like this and you taste it with someone, you're just like, you're actually going through like the notes and what do I like, and it'll make you enjoy it more the next time. So these experiences make me understand more about rum. Besides the fact that you know about it, you can make me understand it better. Am I missing a garnish on this?
I mean, we sometimes put a little bit of mint in there too, just
right.
gives us a little more contrasted color, but
Makes
sure
sense.
That thing's going to be tasty regardless.
So back to Stray Pirate. You had Gwen Rosewater do all the art, and they're yours and Kyle's and any of the other investors and stuff like that.
Yep. So it's a funny story. So Gwen, I think her handle's Velvet Tiki, but she does a ton of art on velvet, which is really cool. To kind of get back to those folks that are into like technology and graphics and everything. A lot of what has to do with what makes, say, a television look great, or how dark the dark black part is, right? Like the contrast that you get there. And to paint something on black velvet means that the depth of something like the pupil of an eyeball looks remarkably natural. And so we reached out to Gwen Rosewater, who does all this stuff on this on black velvet. It's also extremely difficult to paint on, in that world. It's like, it's got the nap, it's velvet, it's exactly what you think it is. And we reached out to her and we said, hey, we have this idea. We want to do dog pirate portraits. And she basically said, I was born for this. Not exactly, but she had hundreds of dog portraits that she's done over her career. Matter of fact, she's almost about done with them. I could even go that far as to say that she wasn't even sure she wanted to keep doing them. And now all of a sudden people are contacting her here and there and saying, hey, I really want a dog portrait. I saw these at Stray Pirate. But that was really purely by happenstance that we reached out to her and we asked her to do a dog portrait. And she happened to have a world of experience in that specific item.
That's incredible. And I saw some of those dogs. Like, it made me wonder how the hell it did look so real. But now, I mean, black velvet, right? That's pretty cool. Pretty cool and that's another thing that over the course of your career, it seems like you kind of gain all these little things that it's like, I didn't know I would need to know this or understand why. But now going forward, these little bits of information they help your next concept. They help your next venue, your next project, whatever you're doing. So, these life experiences that you've gained by, starting off with Gold Spike or actually no, where did you start off?
I started off at the kind of touching on that little Flair bartending background thing.
That's right.
I got fortunate, so I'm sitting here learning how to bartend from a Flair bartender at the Rio. Rio was, hot when it came to that at the moment. My old man had worked at the Fitzgerald's downtown, so that's how I actually got my first barback job. And at that time, that was the spot that Flair bartending was happening downtown. And so, interestingly enough, I just started to go down that path. And to kind of speak on it a little bit more, if you wanted a fresh lemon drop, those were the guys you were asking. They were the ones that we just cared more.
I don't think they got enough respect at that time. Like, and cheers on that.
Hey, thank you so much.
They really didn't. Cheers, Kyler. I think of those days where it was always like really cool to watch a Flair bartender, like even before I was in the business. But I never really appreciated how much they know. They know shots. They're making them fast. They're making them cool. They're making you entertained. And yeah, when you think about when did bartending actually take the step back into like the realm of caring to that next level where it wasn't just colored drinks with, roses, grenadine, and stuff like that, like pop color from blue curacao only, Since we've come from there, you're to think of these Flair bartenders that were really doing a service before everyone was talking about the scene and how we do this. Because I think of Carnival Court, and that's one of the coolest Flair experiences I can picture. That I was just like, wow, there's a lot going on. I bet you these people make a ton of money, and they deserve it more than a lot of even like people like me that, I'm sitting in a really comfortable room where it's like I'm chilling, kind of going at my pace, and they're like sweating, throwing bottles, juggling. You can't really drop, and I can't picture them dropping stuff,
Yeah. I have a chipped tooth from one time that I smacked myself in the face with a small little nick on the bottom of it from when I smacked myself in the face with a shaker tin. But that's what we were doing. Alex from Drink Masters, we used to bar back together at the Fitzgerald's way back when.
Really?
Yep.
So he's been in the town for a while, and he left and came back. Is that what happened?
Honestly, I don't know as much about his trajectory, but when I went and saw him at Lost Spirits, I was like, I don't know if you remember, but we bar backed at the Fitzgerald's way back when, and it was just kind of a little bit of a mind blower. But hey, ask Anthony Pullen to throw some bottles around, and I tell you what, you don't want to go against that guy in a speed competition. I can assure you that much. That's a big part of that culture is people think that, hey, they're taking forever to make a drink, but they're, to be able to get that qualifying level to say that I'm of this proficiency, at least at the time, there was always a speed component.
Yeah. And like recall too, to be able to recall and do it fast. It's like, and I've admitted this, that I'm guilty of not knowing stuff. Famously, the Alabama Slammer, that I'm just like, I don't know what the hell's, and I haven't made one. I'm not one of those guys that's like researching just in case I one day get asked by the one person that still asks for 90s era drinks. But I think about like, man, that's really one of the gifts that a great bartender has, is like that recall and paired with that skill on top of it. Because I don't think bartenders get enough credit, and people in service in general, with how much multitasking is going on. I always hear I'm going to get a real job someday, like quote. And it's like, you don't think that you do like a real job? I think what we do is almost irreplaceable. Like when the AI age comes to maturity, and half people are out, they're not doing stuff because all the software that does the work for them. No one can software a Flair robot. We're far, far away from that. And then also having the conversation where you're enjoying the time you're having with the person that's doing it. Just when they have the machines making them now, yes, it might give you a proportionately balanced cocktail, but half of it's in how it was delivered and how you got it in your hand, and where are you at, and you're like, dang, like I'm starting to really see people that come to Brimari, and if it's not packed, they're like, dang, what's wrong? Like, why isn't there a ton of people in here right now? And I'm like, well, it's just we hit, like, because it's cycles. You have like the people that leave and the people come back in, and we have a huge late night at the bar, and our main dining area is bigger during like regular hours, but in that between where people are done with dinner and then the late nighters are coming out, that we have that like lull. So finding that jovial spirit, you always have to bring the energy up. You always have to, that's part of being a bartender, is keeping the energy, keeping the momentum of, if I see a person's conversation lull, I have to go, and that's my opportunity to ask them and serve and make sure if they need anything, and potentially buffer their conversation and have them have a better time, versus there's other times where I'm like, oh, they're in the middle of a conversation, looks like they're good, I'm not even going to ask them, I'm going to leave them alone. And with you being at more bars than anything, I'm trying to think, like, you really haven't dealt with much food in venues.
Closest, when I was running the program at Atomic, I managed the kitchen there as well, but I still didn't really serve tables as far as that goes. But I do love to cook, so some of that comes naturally enough, but definitely cocktails is where it's at for me.
What's the difference from not having bars with food? Does that change your experience? Like, what your clientele, as far as, because everyone eats, right? So you have, but not everyone drinks, especially nowadays. And when we had the COVID lockdown, you think, well, people needed to have food to even open their doors, right? So I always wonder now, if I were to open up a bar today, like, how do I make sure that I always have the doors open, and things you didn't ever have to think about in the past. That's like the things I'm curious about, because I've only almost always worked in food and bar places. Like, it's never just been cocktail bar. So it's kind of a different world for me.
Honestly, I feel like if you're doing cocktails alone, you can probably be a little bit more outside of the box with your approach, because I would have to think that if we're serving it next to food, you always have to have that consciousness of how well this cocktail pairs with the food items that are there.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe on the other hand, it's always nice having a kitchen to be able to prepare some ingredients in. There's never that moment where I can just count on a few extra basil leaves out of the kitchen. They're either there because we pulled them in for a drink or not. And in a world where basil doesn't even last a whole week before it starts turning brown, you have to be really thoughtful about that approach.
Well, that's a perfect example of a couple of things for me, because I've been spoiled at some places, and then once you get spoiled once, now I want it that way all the time. So it's like when I was at Cut, and you come in there and there's deli cups with the fresh ginger juice made that day, and all that's done for you. That is very labor intensive stuff that you should do, and everyone should have that period of their career where they spend time having to juice and having to do the things that aren't fun, but they tell you what it goes into, making a successful bar. Like, the bar back is at the right concept is the crux that keeps you alive. And when you don't have to have juicing and I mean, normally you cut your own garnish at every bar, but I mean, I can't get over having to not juice. So at Brimari, because I have a kitchen and they don't mind juicing, I'm just like, make sure you put in that juice order, because I don't, So I've gotten to that point where in my career where I'm a little lazier on the things where it's like, I've juiced enough, and I don't need to know how to juice anymore. I know how to. So let someone else do it. But that's part of me being spoiled and having that restaurant back of house, I should say.
I think to touch on something that you were saying about, making sure that you have that part of your career where you had to go through that stuff. I'm a firm believer in, everybody's always looking forward. Like, what's the next step? What am I going to get to next? You're a bar back. When do I get to be a bartender?
100%.
And I think there's something to be said. And I always try to remind everybody of this is this thought process came from Anthony Jameson one time when we were sitting on a panel, and this was something he shared, and I find it incredibly relevant. And it has to do with soak it all in where you're at. You're not going to have another opportunity to do it. If I know how to maybe make a cocktail, it's because I bartended for 20 years. I don't get, now a lot of my focus has to do with building the next building the next team, building, we're going to see that with, with cocktail we'll make here in a little bit, which was something that it uses one of my favorite spirits on the bar, and one of my bartenders put it together. I mean, how are we going to get forward? How are we going to replicate? How are we going to move that the way that it is? And if I know how to walk up to a dishwasher and not a person, the unit, if I can walk up to a mechanical dishwasher and everybody's scratching their head and they say, hey, Tater, what in the world's wrong with this dishwasher? How come I can't get it going? And I'm able to diagnose it in 30 seconds. It's because I bar backed for 3 years.
100%.
It's not because I'm a manager. It's because I soaked it up. And that's, to kind of touch on what I was saying that Anthony said, he says that the further forward that he goes, the more the rudimentary skills count. The more that it matters that you can do some basic algebra in your head, the more
like
that
muscle memory.
Yeah, like can you write a coherent email? Can you put together some sentences in a fashion that can make sense for somebody? Can you respond quickly enough to be able to keep that needle forward? Those are the things that matter more for what I do as of now. People are looking for you to be a decent person. They're looking for you to respond and recognize their requests. They're looking for you to be a person.
Yeah.
And I'm also, maybe I have some knowledge and information about how to make a cocktail or run a bar that I utilize as far as guiding these people down this path. But that's what they want. And that's what your customers want too. Let's just be people first, and then we can give them a drink while we're at it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really like your philosophy on just how you look at the industry. And one of the things that happen a lot, and I mean, any career doesn't have to be in service even, is, fatigue, right? Like, you've been doing it for a long time. You start going like, I know how this all works and I've got it down, and now my brain, and it sounds like your brain kind of wants to deconstruct almost everything you do and understand it. So I guess that would give you a little more longevity, but what's prevented you from getting that burnout? How are you still so passionate and still so excited, from the sounds of it?
Man, it might sound cliche when I say it like this, but it's the people that I worked with. I get a lot of credit for the idea of, say working at Oak and Ivy and what Oak and Ivy was, but if it wasn't for the team, if it wasn't for Katie Cruz and Pinto and Keith Baker and Adam Carroll and the folks that were there that cared every single day, Oak and Ivy, I definitely couldn't have propped it up on my shoulders by myself, so the idea of I'm looking to create some fresh opportunities for me and some fresh opportunities for the next generation that's coming down that path. And I guess I'm also really fortunate that I've had new challenges everywhere I go. All the spots that are on my list that we're penning down over here they're all ones where I got to do some new task. I learned something else. And that's really, I think, what keeps me fresh is the continuous challenge. I mean, hang out in a spot as long as it suits you and as long as you're getting the lifestyle that you'd like to out of it. But if there's not a lot of learning to be done, I think the fastest way to refresh your interest in what you're doing is place yourself in a new location where you're going to get to learn and progress.
Yeah.
I definitely don't do what I was doing. My current job is, aside from my partnership, but, I'd also still manage the spot 5 to sometimes 7 days a week, right? But I'm doing new things there. I'm working with tiki artists. I'm helping develop art, and I'm, we're training new people, and I deal with my general contractors, and where's this outlet go on the wall? Is it the standard 18 or do I need it 48 up so it's off the top of the bar top, right? Like, and just kind of keeping that whole scene moving along is for me what keeps me massively energized for what it is I'm doing. I don't think I could get it done if I wasn't eager to take on a new task and just want to learn the next thing.
Well, and that brings up that you made it very clear to me that Stray Pirate was a collaboration, and that it took it was a lot of intelligent people coming together to make it a product. We talked about Gwen Rosewater's paintings. I know Bamboo Ben was helped with like the style of the furniture, right? Like,
yeah, the decor,
and then
the walls.
One of your partners, Kyle, you said he was adamant about using American-made mugs,
Yep.
which is not something that anybody really does because, as you know, it's more expensive in America to have something manufactured, especially something that's sort of niche. And when you can have it made in China for $20 or $15, and it's this really, and probably even cheaper than that, and it's these really cool mugs. It's like a $70 made in America mug is a statement like, hey, I don't care how much it costs. I have things that I care about, and that's why I have a business, to put the things I care about into the world and promote those things. And you were saying, like, even though you have a mug business there, you were kind of surprised because they're what, like $70 a mug.
They're legitimately twice the price of what most ceramics are costing as far as your general merchandise offerings that are available at these bars. But every now and again, I kind of have to have this conversation. I'll hear the little murmur from a guest, and they're wondering, like, is this really worth it? Should I spend twice as much on this as I maybe did at another place? But they're without a doubt snowflakes. They're handmade. If you look at them, you can very much tell that there's small little differentiating factors between each one, and it might have to do with how hard the hand pressure was when it maybe rubbed the glaze off of it, and they're cool.
Wow. I'm gonna have to come in and get a couple mugs for sure. And I like that it's made in U.S. So that's something that I didn't know, and I'm glad to know. So next time I'm going in, I'm buying one of them cool hand painted mugs. You really, I want to say, for me, I recognized, like, I got to know you from the outside box perspective, because I didn't know you that well. But I always would go into Corduroy the few times that I would go in there, and you hope that you're there. And there was that cool, awesome wall, so I can kind of really picture seeing you behind that cool, awesome wall that was behind you. And you were there for a while, right?
I was there for like probably, and again, I'm real lucky to have new opportunities, and that's again what I'm saying is keeping me moving. But I think it was like just a little less than 3 years. So it wasn't super long, but definitely for a decent little amount of time.
Well, considering the places that you've been, Oak and Ivy is another. It's like I'm thinking of all the iconic bars in town that when you hear a person's done one of those jobs, you go, oh, they must be pretty damn good.
But I just got to go back and kind of, it's the people, it's the team. Without a doubt, if I wasn't sitting there with, my dude Alex Penalosa, right, sitting there by my side, helping us to drive the quality that it is we wanted to do, Corduroy wouldn't have been as awesome without it. Maybe I was fortunate enough to where, or we were fortunate enough to where I was able to help, us generate some funds because there was somebody to point at and say, hey, this is a person who maybe can help us make this successful. But I needed the team, every single time, right? Definitely lucky to get to be around and get to learn and help build these places up. But the team's where it's at. I'm incredibly fortunate for the folks that I've gotten to be with along the way. And I would say without a doubt, there's no way I would have gotten as far as I did if it wasn't for people that were down to follow maybe some dreams that I was working along the way.
Wow. And really to carry home your point, the team that you have curated at Stray Pirate, I know they're winning competitions and competing and involved in the world of cocktail, which you can have a cool job with a cool boss, and it doesn't mean that you're going to go out and spend your free time investing in your craft and investing in, like, my big thing about competitions is when, like, the announcer comes over to you and he wants to question you or she wants to question you when you're making a cocktail, and then you got to, like, really think about what you're doing while doing it and then explaining to people why you're doing it while still performing the act. It's a lot of things going on, and the first couple times you do it, it's like, oh, I'm not ready for this, and you panic and you shake. But the more you put yourself in that role and experience that pressure, it starts translating into experiences with your guests and in life. Again, it doesn't have to translate to bartending. It's my interactions with people. I'm better at conversing with people now than ever because of how long I've been conversing with people for a job. And then when I incorporate that competition aspect and how much I actually don't just do it because it tastes good. You actually have to understand why it tastes good so that you can show other people what they're going to gain from it. And I've noticed that a lot of your bartenders say these things, talk about like leadership, and are becoming leaders in the industry, even though a lot of them are very young. So I was like, bravo. And that shows, again, kind of the goal in town is it's a small town. So your successes and your failures are relatively known. And it sounds like you've never moved backwards. You've never taken a step back. And it's kind of the next thing. So, credit to you. And that's something I would take a lot of pride in, because it's carried a lot of weight so far. And I've seen these competitions, and when they're like, oh, straight pirate, you're like, cool, I know this person's going to bring the pain.
You know, a little humble brag or whatever, but there's moments where we show up to a comp and maybe there's folks from Oak and folks from Corduroy and folks from Straight Pirate that are involved, and honestly, like, brings a little, like, legitimately gives me goosebumps when I consider that, you know, some of these people, we haven't even really worked together, but they feel extremely strong about wanting to hold the line. They want to make sure that they're doing it all right, and I want to be there to support them as much as I possibly can. That's an amazing thing to have gotten to be a part of something to where these people are still willing to progress and push it forward. You know, just something else to kind of lead into, or, you know, build off of what you said about doing a competition where it's difficult and it's stressful. You know, a mentor of mine along the way said that, you know, really strong value is to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And that's really what we're doing. You show up to a competition, you know, I'm going to say a thing that maybe we don't think about all the time, but bartending's scary.
Yeah.
There's a whole room of people that are expecting you know the exact right answer, and maybe don't mess up because they're all watching.
And talking shit.
Yeah. You're watching the little murmurs on the side and that whole thing. So
that's not how I do it. That's not how I would do it.
Like, yeah. I came out of my shell to be able to bartend. I don't consider myself an extrovert. I just kind of sit back there and like to try to show some people a good time, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think there's something to be said about that, and I would lean into, say, your own growth when it comes to it. Like, put yourself in an uncomfortable situation and see what you get out of it.
In life, right?
Yeah.
Any time. It means that you force yourself to learn the new skill.
Yep.
The strength that you didn't know you had. You know?
And then once you do it, all of a sudden, now you got it. And you can move even farther forward as a result.
All right, so I'm going to start constructing a caipirinha. We were talking about possibly doing a caipiroski by using Weber Ranch, which I'm going to show the bottle, and that's a great option that you can alternatively use instead of the rum that we're going to use. Cachaça that we're going to use. But I wanted to make this kind of a rum-centric episode since, I don't think rum gets enough love. You know, because it's like right now it's tequila central. Everyone's talking about tequila. And, you know, whiskeys will never go anywhere as far as they'll always be talked about, but they have their ups and downs of like how much. And rum's one of those things, like if you're at a tiki bar, if you're talking to a person that really gets like that tiki culture or rum or, you know, the Caribbean lifestyle, anything like that, you'll talk rum, but that's it. Like I don't talk rum with people at Brimari much. We have a small cubby for rum. It's not limited in any way. It's got like all the representation you'd want from a bar that's not rum centric. But we were like, well, we would add if anyone was asking for that category. And obviously it's concept, right? Like Italian, you don't think rum. But I wanted to stick with that rum profile, which, you know, cachaça is evaporated cane juice, which gives it that really funky, grassy note and makes me love this cocktail immensely. So I'm going to make it a very traditional way in the glass, which, you know, I like to make it in a beaker more often because I know that I'm getting it fully mixed and like throughout, but I really want to show the classic way that they make it there in Brazil. It's Brazil's #1 or national cocktail. And it's what does it mean? It's like little drink I think that means like little drink in Portuguese.
I actually don't know.
I believe so. And while I'm making that, I wanted to see, you brought some books.
Man, I brought a lot of stuff that's real special to me. But hey, on that note, that Jaeger Zombie was pretty tasty.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic.
It's surprising how
I didn't
well
want to
that thing
interrupt you to
works out.
tell you that, but I was like, man, I wasn't sure if I was kind of like, man, I really wanted to taste. I know the one that's at Stray is probably awesome, but am I going to like this Jaeger one? Because Jaeger gets a little shade from those, you know, the people's like, I don't want to say like younger years of drinking, but like college years of getting hammered on Jaeger and then saying, well, I don't drink Jaeger because it's my worst hangover of my life. I'm like, anything with a ton of sugar and you're getting drunk off of it, probably not the best. But using it as a modifier is really coming into vogue. So don't neglect the Jaeger. Just think of it in a different way. Don't make it a base spirit. Don't think you have to shoot it. You know, you could use a half ounce of it in a product or even less and get a bitter and a sweeter profile without having to, you know, be afraid of it. And then I also wanted to ask which one we prefer, because you said you've never tried this. I've never tried this.
I have not. I feel like we should go for it.
So we're gonna try this. And then when in doubt, Ioca makes a great product, and you're always safe with Ioca. And that brings up, I have a lot of conversations with some people think that if you have a bottle and it's a liquor, like a spirit, it could be up there forever. It could be up there 50 years, and it's the same thing. Now, if it's sealed and it's got no air in there, it's the same thing because it's a sealed product. But this was given to me about 10 or so years ago when someone went to Brazil and they brought me back this really cool bottle of Ioca from Brazil. And it's an aged, and I've been showing it to people for like years now. I've neglected to show it for the last couple of years. And I had friends over last night, and I was thinking about caipirinha, and I was like, cool, I'm gonna show you guys some cachaça, because as soon as someone says what's cachaça, I have to, it's like, oh, let me show you. It's such a cool spirit. And I showed them. I might have just showed them LeBlanc, but then I was like, but now here's something cool, and I pulled this out. And I didn't check it or anything first, and I poured it into the glass, and they're like, this is pretty terrible. And I'm like, oh, this is dead. It's like it's lost all of its luster. And because it's been about that full for probably 5 years. Once there's that much space for oxygen in a bottle, especially with things that are aged, like if it's a Blanco spirit, it's going to be fine. But anything that's had that age and controlled oxidation, whiskeys especially, if you have a half full bottle of whiskey, don't babysit it for 5 more years. Start drinking that or changing the vessel to take some of that air out. So I thought that would be something interesting for a few people to learn, because I actually have to dump this bottle, which makes me really sad, because Alana Bernstein gave me this like a decade ago. But, it's sacrilege to waste, but if it's not good anymore, it is what it is. But let's give this a taste, and then back to what those books, why you brought those books and a little bit about them.
Awesome. So, really it's... you're the product of your own experiences, I guess, is the heads and tails of what I'm trying to say, right? But I got real fortunate in having some members of my family that were really into cocktails and awesome spirits, and here I am making Mai Tais like crazy. And I can remember being 17 years old, and my mom, mid-90s, I'm 17, my mom was upset she could only find blue curacao for a Mai Tai, which is wild, right? So to answer your question specifically, my Uncle Stuart passed away at 91, a little bit less than 2 years ago. Bottle of rum we're going to crack open later was something that I inherited from him. Uncle Stuart was known to have a drink in his hand, but in the classiest possible way. Without a doubt, he was he exemplified being humble, being restrained. He was incredibly intelligent, and there's books that I got from him too. And the coolest thing about it is, like, we're looking at vintage spirits and forgotten cocktails and Death & Co. These books are less, we're talking about less than 15 years old, maybe 16 or 17 here. This gentleman was in his 70s and 80s, and these are his notes. So as much as we always had that in common and we shared it, nowadays I have these books to look back, and I can see that he was making revolvers. He was doing it. And that's awesome, right? He was never a bartender. He was a legitimate engineer that worked with NASA. But he happened to love cocktails, and so I brought a couple of the books, and cool. When I say that they're my prized possessions, I've got my copy of Death & Co. It's not the one that Uncle Stuart was ripping through. It's not the one that's got his dog tags in it, right? So that's awesome. And I'm real fortunate for, that little sum of all experiences. I was able to watch how somebody could drink a refined cocktail and have something in their hand and not mean that you were the, maybe like the drunk at the end of the bar or whatever that could come along with it. I just wanted to bring him to show him off. Honestly, I think it's rad. I've probably gone through him a little bit more over the last week or so, but I can see why he had, Kirschwasser in his collection and Chartreuse and some of the awesome stuff he had, because these were literally the experiences that he was trying to create for himself at the house. And, not that many folks are that keen on learning so much once you start getting into your 80s. And the fact that he was still going down that path and, actively studying these items that we care so much about. I was incredibly touched by that idea. So definitely some of my prized possessions. And I'll be digging through here to have one for Uncle Stuart for the rest of my life, right?
That's incredible. And the two most endearing things about that to me was the fact that you said he was still learning and taking notes in his 80s, and it's not even his career. Like it's a hobby. It's something he enjoyed. And that the other part of that makes me think, what's your excuse if you're in this industry and you haven't done a little research and perfected your craft? Because he perfected a craft that wasn't even his craft.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And obviously that speaks to the kind of guy he was, obviously, and not everyone is built with the same stuff. But it's like, to me, that's so impressive, because to be good at what you're getting paid to be good at, it's easy, right? Like it makes no sense not to be decent at it. You're getting paid.
Yeah.
And the more you get paid based on often on merit, right? Whereas it's like, he's not getting paid to do that. He's taking his time. He's taking thoughtful notes that like he's going to reference in the future. And I'm just like, man, I need to get my shit together,
Yeah.
you know? But that's impressive.
To get a little bit into like the dirt of it, right? Maybe one of my biggest pet peeves in the world, I'll give this a try. One of my biggest pet peeves in the world is, at least in our cocktail world, somebody will come up and they want a job, and they're a fast learner, right? At least so they tell you, I'm a fast learner. And then maybe, and I'm not looking to stump somebody in an interview. I'm just going to ask them what it is that you're into, and then see if I can get any sort of, hey, if you got some passion for it, we can apply that passion towards rum or whiskey at the time at Oak and Ivy or whatever. But they come in and they say, well, I worked in a tequila bar. That's the spirit I know the most about. And I say, awesome. What can you tell me about tequila? How's it made?
Yeah, you better.
And I'm like, and they've been here for a couple of years, and they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, man, why is that going to change when we come to a rum bar? Like, if that's where you were, I mean, I'm down to take whatever passion it is you have. Just share it with me. If you have something that you decided to apply yourself to, I'm going to probably take that as saying you can apply yourself to a lot of stuff. But if you're not going to take that moment when you had it to apply yourself there, it's definitely a difficult thing for me to believe that you're all of a sudden going to become this fast learner that you're claiming you're going to be. And I've read it on a lot of applications, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing now. You have to really be careful, because everyone goes, just lie. And it's like, you can lie when you're at the corporate gig that you're trying to get, that's kind of, they go through a lot of employees, and the person that's hiring has probably been a manager for a year or two, and they're a manager. They're not like a beverage program person or whatever. And it's like, if they're in front of you, they're going to get different questions than how do you, like, you can tell a personality kind of quickly after hanging out with them for a few minutes.
Yep.
But, what they're lying about, or what they're, like, hey, I worked at a tequila bar for several years. What do you know about tequila? Ooh, not much. What the fuck? Like, that's really unacceptable. By osmosis, you have to learn a little bit. So it's like, well, that if you didn't care enough to even try, like, to gain some of that knowledge, then why would I want you here, as much as I might like you? And as vice versa, the other part of that is, I don't need a long time to tell if I enjoy somebody as like, if I'm going to hire, I need to know that I would be, it's not just professional. Like, if they know their stuff, I also need to know that we would get along, because the chemistry behind a bar especially is very important. If you don't like who you work with, more often than not, whether you like it or not, it's going to be visible in some way or another. You hope that you don't have to be best friends with anybody to work with them. But I'll tell you, when you don't like people that you work with, or they're completely different style, more often than not, I can feel or sense or see that. So that's like, quickly in the beginning of an interview, I could tell, okay, I probably would work well, or I wouldn't with this person. And then now I want to know, what have you taken your previous job seriously? And that's like, I wouldn't be nervous, because I feel like I know what I'm doing. But 10 years ago, if I was interviewing with you, I'd have probably been in trouble, because there was a period of my life where I didn't take this as seriously, because I didn't realize what I was giving to the guest, that every guest I deal with, but if you take an active interest in whatever you're doing, it translates to the guest. So I feel like it's an interesting factor, and I like that you interview in that way, where hey, okay, fine, you weren't passionate about that, but what is your passion? Let me know so I know you can get behind something and I have that belief in you.
Yeah, I'm not looking to stump you.
Right.
I'm looking for you to tell me what it is you're into.
Right, but it's a business,
And let's just talk about that,
you know,
right?
and I
Like,
want to
hey,
know I'm hiring the right guy or
yep.
girl. Real quickly, I wanted your opinion. To me, obviously lower quality.
Not quite as grassy as some of the stuff, you know. I feel like I'm not really picking up as much of the like that those sugarcane evaporated notes as you normally would, right?
I have an industrial note from it. It's very like oil, like an oily, like I can't describe the aroma, but it's an industrial, like I almost want to say it reminds me a little bit of like a molasses base with that aftertaste.
Yeah, like a little bit of astringency, you know, a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of astringency that I feel like you don't always pick up from cachaça, right?
Yeah, and I gave you the ioca to compare, which on the nose right off the bat. Yep. Right off the bat, it yips. But no, I was like right off the bat, it's got way more tropical, way more like a. I don't know if you can smell sweet, but it's a more juicy aroma, a more fruity aroma.
I almost call it like creamy,
Yeah,
right? It's, you know, it's like yeasty or creamy or
but the aroma is Kyler's maturity is struggling at the moment. Um,
I'm making pizza dough at home, so I know what you mean.
but yeah, this
I'm
on the
the one that
nose.
said I like the dirty jokes.
On the nose, this one's so much more pleasant. Right off the gate. No offense to Soul.
Suck it, soul.
A lot more body on this one too.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like that. If you didn't, I know that there was some things that define. Like you could tell this was a cachaça, but barely. Like you could have told me that was like a really unique, funky artisanal rum, and I would just be like, oh, not as much for me. But this one is just like, and it's not over the top, and it's not extremely express. It's not like a bold expression, but it's like you're never gonna go wrong with something like that. I also am a huge fan of LeBlanc. You know, call me crazy. I feel like they've been doing it right for years. What's your opinion on LeBlanc?
Honestly, my dog in the fight's normally Avuá.
Ooh, yeah, they're taking the scene by storm lately.
You know, that Ambarana, just the idea that somebody would use native wood to where they're from, I think brings a lot to it. I mean, it's such a like a localized product. So the idea of thinking that you're utilizing local wood to age that product and then how wild those flavors are, it just tastes nothing like American oak. So that was definitely one of my favorites from the line, but we use the Prata for our general purpose stuff at Stray.
Oh, okay, yeah. So good pick. And yeah, the difference is stark.
Yep.
Well, with your experience, so did you gravitate because you picked who picked the concept of Stray Pirate? Was it you? Was it Kyle? Was it kind of collaborative because you both love your dogs and both love pirates? Obviously, you've had a big background in rums from what it sounds like because you really seem to really know a lot about rum. What made you pick on that kind of a concept? Because that's the hard question. Like, what's going to work where? What's missing? You don't want a steakhouse next to a steakhouse because now you're competing with a steakhouse, you know? And I would say there's more tiki bars popping up, and I know that you don't like to necessarily call it a tiki bar. It's more of like a tropical.
We just wanted to keep it wide open, right? I
Right.
was looking to make cocktails. First and foremost, my passion's cocktails. You know, as far as that goes, obviously service and developing some team members like we were discussing. But rum is definitely not my first passion, contrary to what you were saying. I like to say my alma mater is American whiskey, right? That's how I started. It was Oak and Ivy, right? We were doing American whiskey. What I'm into is going down a path and learning, you know, developing that passion for it. I find that having a little bit of an understanding of craft beer definitely helps because there's just a lot happening there with fermentation, right? Understanding how lactobacillus operates, and specifically when we start getting to some of my favorite spirits, and talking about some things that are fermented for a really long time. I think one of the coolest parts about rum has to do with the idea that there's an offering for almost everybody. You know, if we talk about cachaça or agricole, It's a great option for somebody who's maybe into tequila or more botanical flavors from gin. If you're into whiskey, I'm probably going to shoot you down maybe towards like a Venezuelan rum, something that's a little bit more barrel focused. And I think that that's awesome that rum is such a wide category that, my favorite disarming question to ask a guest to figure out what it is they want is, hey, what's your dive bar order? If it's a Corona, fine. Do you take it with or without a lime? Right? That tells me all the stuff I need to know. How do you drink your coffee? Is it black or is it hashtag pumpkin spice latte?
I mean, that's a helpful one.
That
the Corona
teaches
one,
us.
I was like, you need to teach me more because
Hey, just whatever it is you're into, right? Do you drink your vodka with soda or cranberry? And all this information tells me, because I'm looking at, they don't know what they want. They're looking at a bunch of words on a piece of paper that they don't necessarily know what they mean. So I got to ask you a question that you can actually answer.
You're right around the corner from a bunch of really cool breweries. Do you guys carry a lot of their products?
We honestly carry as much local stuff as we can. We do. We have Atomic Duck, Abel Baker on draft. We're right around the corner from them. We make our rum espresso martini variant with Vesta coffee. Super close relationship with those guys.
they're around the corner from you too, right?
Yeah, most definitely. They no joke come over with like a bag with a couple handles, and they walk it in the front door and slap it on the bar, and they ask if we're going to use it this week or next because you should be resting your coffee beans for a number of days after you roast. So it's like, if I'm going to turn around and take these beans and turn them into a cold brew, am I going to use them this week or next week? And we're real fortunate to be able to have that kind of relationship to say, hey, I need coffee. I've got to make it tomorrow, or I'm not going to make it till next week. And they'll give me beans that were roasted appropriately in regards to where it was on the schedule to know that we can make them, make that product and have it be as tasty as we possibly can. So super important in the Arts District. That's the whole thing. It's the neighborhood. We send everybody to everybody. Real close relationship with Liquid Diet and anybody that we can, we're right near Imperial and Commerce. You go down Imperial a little bit, you catch Silver Stamp. It's, I'm of the opinion it's a world-class beer bar.
I mean, it definitely is.
Yeah.
And there's no confusion about it because you can't get it really anything else except Underberg, which you can get those little Underbergs, and that's like it, and a few food items. You have to like beer to go in there, and they have a cool collection, like 9 or so tap heads, but a lot of canned and bottled. Is that how?
I think it's 20.
Oh, it's 20. Okay, that's right.
But they're definitely not, they're not like Haze-Bros. They're not like, it's not all smoothie sours, right? It reflects, when I was talking about the idea of, you're the sum of your experiences, it reflects their experiences that they've been through. Respects their travels that they've had around Europe and everywhere that they've been to be able to put those 20 tap handles together as they do.
When you say Haze-Bros, is that like a pejorative term for?
It's a little bit of a jab, right? Like,
it's not a place, right? That's not like a bar that you're referring to, right?
No, like, do all our beers have to be unfiltered? I mean, maybe some of them, maybe not, but I just feel like there's definitely a heavy movement right now towards like particulate matter in beer. And I think that it has its place, but I think maybe if you had to ask my opinion, I'd say maybe it shouldn't be the majority of the offering, right?
And that really did take over to like, so that's why, because because it was like Sierra Nevada Hazy IPA. That one like took the market by storm, and everyone was like, oh, I don't think I care about IPAs anymore. I want hazies, which I'm one of those guilty people because I've never really been like the IPA guy. And when I had that, I'm like, oh, I could have this IPA. So it's like milder. It milds it out for me.
We used to, not that long ago, I'm not a beer pro, but I feel like we were maybe calling them New England IPAs for a minute there.
Okay.
And I feel like if you go back and score that, that Alchemist Heady Topper, I think it's from Vermont, which we don't get it out here, but I'm going to say that I think that was the beer that was kind of credited with, kicking off some of the hazy IPA movement. It doesn't reflect as much of what I feel like is served nowadays. Definitely still has like some crisp notes to it. But I feel like there's a lot of focus on how can I make the solid stay suspended inside of the liquid. So then that way it gets the hazy note versus, like why are we adding the particulates? Are they actually adding something positive to the beer? We just want to make sure that it's hazy.
Yeah, and I can't profess to be like a beer head either. I am where I work. I found if I'm at an Italian place, I'm going way more on Amaro than usual, and if I'm on when I was working at Capitol Grill, I was obsessive about Scotch, and now I almost never like that's never my go-to. Again, if I'm hanging out with Eric Kluver, we're definitely having some Scotch, but it really depends on what I'm doing. Is where I'm spending most of my time, investing most of my palate because my palate changes like. There's a guy Matt Zampa who eats the same breakfast every single day of his life, like every day, and I'm just like, man, my palate tastes. I don't want the same things. I can't. It doesn't matter if it's food, beverage, what have you. And I wish
Women?
what?
Women.
Well, I stay on that. Okay, well played, this guy. But I honestly. My palate changes so much that I don't understand the person that's in their 60s that's still drinking the same thing they've been drinking. Oh, I've been drinking this for 30 years. It's like, really? You don't want anything new? Like,
Coors Light till you die.
right? And that I was actually, so we had David English on the podcast recently. I still had Coors Light from that podcast. I was like, really? Coors Light? And he's like, cold and shitty. And then like the next person to come into my house and they're like, you have a beer? I'm like, cold and shitty one. And they're like, man, I was like, don't blame me, but I wouldn't even have beer if it wasn't for that, for David English. So it's like, again, I'm going to opt for like an Amaro and soda now, and it's like, I really delve into wherever I'm working to that point to where it's like, now I'm obsessed again with plus tequila, because believe it or not, an Italian restaurant at Brimare, we have more tequila than we even have Amaro. So like that's because Constantine, the owner, one of the owners is like a spirits nerd, and our favorite thing to do with him is he'll be like, I'm gonna go in the other room, pour me 2 spirits. I don't want to know what they are. I get to ask you 3 questions and I have to nail what it is. It's not the category, but what it is, like by the name, by the brand. And it's fun, and he's actually a wizard. He gets it almost always, but it's been like a fun experience working there, and I get to totally taste and nerd out with people. He allows us to, if you're like, oh, I really wish I wonder what that's like, and it's like a $30 shot, yeah, most people aren't going to give you a taste of that. And we're just like, he gives me shit because I give a little too big of a taste, but it's like, I'll give like a little, just like less than a quarter of an ounce, right? But there you go, taste it. See if you're going to like that. I don't want you to commit to something you're not going to like and then regret it, and they let us do that. So I love that personally.
That's awesome.
Hey, you guys make your own fresh ginger beer?
Yeah, we do.
That's pretty dope. Is that labor intensive? How long does that take?
It's a bit, right? Juicing ginger is definitely difficult. There's no fermentation. I would argue to say that we're not actually brewing ginger beer, because we'll say the brewing involves extraction by hot water. So we juice the ginger, sweeten it from that point, and then we keg it.
You keg it. Is that how you carbonate it?
Yeah. Well, we started off with like it has to be lengthened anyway, so we definitely would add some soda water, and then we keg it, and then that keeps it under carbonation too.
Sweet. How often are you making that?
We go through it pretty healthily, so probably 4 times a week. But I really like it because it's like a tangible for a guest. Like if you come in, maybe you don't know what else to get. Maybe you're gonna get that mule or get that dark and stormy or that bark and stormy, if you will. But you could tell how tasty it is, right? And I'm trying to create an opportunity where like, hey, this is a safe space to try something new. Like if you really don't like it, like, yo, let's dump it down the drain.
Well, who else does that?
I mean, alcohol will abuse you every time it can. Maybe we get one on it, right? Let's dump it down the drain. We'll try something else, right? But to have a few opportunities of something that somebody's comfortable with, but then they can definitely tell the quality, that's an awesome one where I can put that in front of you or give you a little sample, and they can tell that we care. And then from that point, you might be willing to try all sorts of stuff that you weren't so eager to do. And hey, drinks aren't expensive anymore, or aren't inexpensive anymore. Nobody wants to huck a $20 bill towards something they hate.
Very true.
So now that that's finished, I know it took me a while, but there's a lot of moving parts back here. So a full lime is definitely ideal. You got the 2 teaspoons. Everyone will vary on the syrup or the sugar. I used to do simple syrup, but a lot of traditionalists and the authentic way is with granulated sugar because they say like that sugar really grits into the oils in the lime and helps you muddle it up as well. And then I actually kind of went a little heavy on the ioca. So we'll see. I hope I didn't over booze it, but it's about like almost 3 ounces of ioca in there. And that's it. Made in the glass because, again, it's like if you're picturing where this is made in Brazil, it's the #1 cocktail there, their national cocktail. So I highly recommend it. And for a podcast soon, I'll definitely make a Capiroski. But all you have to do is do what I said with, instead of using cachaça, you use Weber Ranch vodka or an inferior vodka of some other sort. And and then you have a Capiroski.
Yeah, or a lesser vodka. I think the sugar brings a little bit of texture to the drink too.
That makes sense too. Because I'm actually wanting to get back into trying old fashions with the muddled sugar more so. Because when I first learned old fashions, they say take the cherry, take the orange, muddle it with sugar, and that's like really bad. But if you're in Wisconsin, they wouldn't say that. And then
get that thing sweet with a little splash of Coke on top.
Oh my God.
You follow Charlie Barron's?
No.
He's funny. He really discusses the entirety of the culture, right? He's in there making Bloody Marys, stirring them with a buck knife. But he talks about he talks a lot about Wisconsin culture, and drinking comes right along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they love their old fashioned there. They'll tell you it's not a real old fashioned if it's not a Wisconsin old fashioned. But I got really into a simple syrup, bitters and whiskey stirred, no muddling. And I always, yeah, thank you. Delicious. It's been one of my favorite cocktails for years, just because it's simplicity. And I find the older I get, the more I want things that are good without a lot of frill. Like I love when something's a 10 component thing that they fat wash 3 of the ingredients and it's complex. But I'm also like, man, I'm never going to do that for myself. And obviously that's why I'll pay the absorbent prices of some cocktail places. And, you're spending $25 at some restaurants on the strip and you're like, this better knock my socks off. For $25, I want it to be pretty good. But that's why it's like now if it's simple and delicious, that's really where my heart's at now. Minimalist even.
I definitely like the refreshment of a sour cocktail as opposed to a straightforward one. Just in my personal, consumption, I'm going to be way more likely to have a daiquiri, caipirinha, margarita, something in that vein. If I wanted something straightforward, just my personal preference is I would generally just drink it neat. But that being said, if I can get a sour cocktail where I can determine the spirit inside of that drink, that's the win for me. Like if I can have a daiquiri and be able to know that I can taste what rum is in that daiquiri, that's going to be the win for me in a cocktail. And I think that once you start adding too many more ingredients, it starts muddying your ability to determine, like, hey, this is a Jamaican rum daiquiri, and I can tell when I taste it.
Yeah. And I need something that I can recreate without dreading it. Like I don't want to have like a cocktail party and have like this really cool idea and spend hours on it, and then when I'm doing it I'm like, yeah, it was cool, I did this and this, but my lord, I spent half my day yesterday doing it. And I don't get me wrong, I've seen Chase from Sandow making like a a clarified rum punch that is just like out of this world and took him hours to create, and it's one of the most delicious cocktails of my life. But I'm also like, man, I'm glad I don't have to make that.
Yo, you ever been in the weeds at your aunt's house because all your family knows you know how to make cocktails?
And in the weeds in my own house,
without
for sure.
a doubt, yo.
I actually have a thing because if I only have a couple parties a year. And it'll be like, I always like 4th of July summer parties, especially because I have neighbors and I don't want to like bug them with late night stuff, which is pretty, expected in this town. And with bartenders, we're all late night people. Everyone's always like, why don't you relax? Get in the pool. Come and join us. And I'm like, all right, finally coming in. And then someone's like, ooh, I'm out. And it's just like, okay, fuck me then. I'm just going to get back to behind the bar where I should be, So it's one of those things that I will be. The more I do this, the more I learn, okay, I'm going to have the bottle in the freezer of martinis for my certain friends. I'm going to have pre-made batch with the citrus already in it. Don't care that it's only got a shelf life of a day or so on it. I'm like, this is happening. I'm going to be like, there it is. Push the button. It'll dispense into your glass. We're done here. I'm out to have fun. And that's like, something I want to get into on the channel will eventually be showing people easy ways to have really cool craft cocktails, but at the push of a button, or you don't even have to stir it. Just pre-diluted, put it in your freezer. And now it's like, oh, it's my turn to make you another drink. Cool, look, and walk back into the pool. That would be fun on here.
I've definitely served a drink to a family member that takes a sip. I'm already, again, like I said, we're in the weeds, sitting around the kitchen, doing whatever it is. You didn't realize you were working the party, and then you give your aunt a cocktail, and she says, I think it's missing something.
Oh, my God.
It's like, oh,
This isn't your best.
yeah, it seems like my shift is about over, yo.
Yeah.
And it hurts even more,
Yeah.
You're like, oh.
Yeah. Like, I feel like I've had a customer that paid me $20 for this thing that I have to say, hey, like, I could tell you don't really like it. And they say, no, it's fine. And I'm like, no, tell me. I want you leaving here knowing that you loved your experience. I'd far rather dump it down the drain and start on a fresh one that you'd actually like, right?
100%.
But they'll definitely tell you it's missing something.
That's hilarious. Tammy, you just said something about, I lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me, but it was something about that. But I do want to, because we're going to run out of time here shortly, I do want to start talking about that rum while we enjoy our caipirinha before we put it in the daiquiri, because you said it's going to produce some more briny, more interesting daiquiri. And recently we just had Tucker St. John on, and we had a daiquiri to start that podcast. And also, I want to bring up that we had a cocktail competition at Superfrico where Morrow, who's a genius in this town as well, he wanted to, for a tiebreaker between me and Jen, it was a Daq-Off. He's like, oh, it's a Daq-Off. And everyone's like, it's a Daq-Off. And I was like, oh, okay, so we're going to make a daiquiri. But now I guess I wasn't being thoughtful enough, because I was like, obviously there was no rum brand that was representing the competition. So I'm like, well, obviously I'm not going to use a rum to make the daiquiri. Now, that was my first mistake, because she just grabbed like Bacardi off the back bar and made a rum. I think I made it faster. I think I had it down faster. Garnish looked great. And they're like, man, yours was great, but you used a tequila. I'm like, yeah, our sponsor. And they're like, well, that's a margarita. I'm like, no, it's not. I was like, just because it has lime in it doesn't make it a margarita. Plus, it's not agave. I'm like, that's a daiquiri with a different base. And they're like, oh, you should have done rum, bro, because this is delicious, but you're not it. You lose. And I was so mad. So now I almost hate daiquiris because of that. and honestly, I would have expected to lose to Jen anyways, because she's a badass. So I was like, probably would have got knocked out in the final round. But I was like, lesson of it doesn't matter. If someone says a Daq-Off, just use rum. Don't use the sponsor. I was so mad because I was like, what sponsor wants you to pour a rum that has nothing to do with the competition? So if you can tell, I'm salty about that loss. But no, so daiquiris are kind of one of those things that a lot of people say, I measure a bartender by how good they make a daiquiri. Do you have that philosophy at all, or?
No, but I do think it's one of those ones where you should maybe have come across it at one point or another. It's a 3-ingredient drink. Maybe the 4th ingredient is intention. You have to intend to make a good cocktail. And that's that like old-fashioned like territory, daiquiri territory. Even a margarita, everybody makes one. Everybody's is the best, right? You make the best margaritas. I make the best Bloody Marys, didn't you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to sell it.
You have to intend on making it, right? So I don't really, say that's, hey, that makes you a great bartender or not. If you can show me a good time and you're attentive and you care about what it is you're putting out there, I'm calling you a good bartender. But that being said, I do think that maybe you should have come across it at one point or another, especially if we're saying that it's important to apply yourself to the craft. Maybe not wait for it to smack you in the face in an interview.
I mean, yeah, if you don't know what a daiquiri is on an interview for a bar job, you're in trouble. And we were talking about the sour build, which I like to say, like, when in doubt, when someone says like make me something and they don't know what they like, I go Collins build, which is a sour with club soda. And another proportion that's always safe is 2-1-1, right? 2 base, 1 sugar, 1 acid. So lemon's the acids, sugar, simple syrup. 2-1-1. If you don't know what you're doing and you want to make a palatable cocktail, that's a safe bet without knowing anything about the bar world. But now you talk to someone and they'll say, oh, I do 2, 1, 3/4 of simple syrup because they like that more tartness. I don't ever hear someone go more than like even parts on the sugar. What is a sour build for you, do you like to diminish the sugar a little bit so that the sour is a little more tart? Is that the way you make a daiquiri but not other sours? Do you have a format, or does it always depend on the rum, the proof of the rum, what type of rum are you using? Or do you say, oh, I go a Plata or a Blanco rum or a white rum, either way, and there's not too many of those that are gonna be like overproofed and you wouldn't use an overproof rum in a daiquiri. So,
Wouldn't I?
oh,
I mean, anytime I could, right? I want to taste that base spirit and that sour
like
cocktail,
2 ounces.
right? Well, at least an overproof one, right? Like maybe. But I think, on that note, rum varies so much. Some of it's sweeter than other products, right? So it's definitely in that category. I think you need to have some understanding of that base spirit, especially if you're of that mindset that, cocktail's the picture. I'm sorry, the spirit's the picture, the cocktail's the frame, right? We want to not cover up the picture with the frame, right?
You got to have a couple shirts made out of some of the things you've said today,
That's probably a Francesco right there.
Okay, fair enough.
Definitely major mentor to me as well along the way, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, for a daiquiri, I'm going to generally go 2-1-1, but I like to put a piece of lime in it to get some of that same like oil that we're going to get. So I like to shake it with that too.
Is that considered the Regal shake? Because I know a peel is that. Is that a Regal shake when you put in a piece of fruit?
Honestly, you said it to me earlier. I've never heard that. I've never heard the term before. But I like making a daiquiri with just that little piece of fruit that's going to give us a little bit extra from that peel. I picked the concept up at I think it's called the Comstock in San Francisco, and the bartender had lime peel infused with 100 proof Martinique. I think it was Trois Riveras, but my French is quite poor, but not available out here. Unfortunately, they have a single estate product that's made by the ocean that picks up some brininess that's divine. So I really can't wait for that rum to land out here. But he had this bright green little dasher bottle, and every time he made a daiquiri, he dashed it with essentially lime peel essence. And at that point, I was like, man, I want that in my daiquiris from here on out. So
Brilliant.
And shaking that Mai Tai, little piece of lime that's hanging out in there, trying to get some extra oils from the rind. I think it really brings a lot to that drink.
The Regal shake is a bartender technique where a freshly cut citrus zest strip is added to the shaker along with the other ingredients and ice. So according to this, it's just the zest. So putting the whole wedge in it wouldn't technically be a Regal, but we all learn. So yeah, Regal. I always because there's a couple cocktails, and we do it for a couple things at Brimari, but there's a couple cocktails that call for a grapefruit peel in the stirring glass or in the mixing glass, and for the same reasons that you're saying. But that's cool, and I honestly need to incorporate that level of thoughtfulness because it really is like, why is his daiquiri better? And you're like, well, everyone does 2-1-1 basically, but what do I do? And that's those little touches that you learn along the way that really, that separate. And I want to say mine is the hard shake. A lot of people have like a decent shake, but man, when you smack the hell out of that and you just introduce a lot of oxygen and like, especially when it's going and it's a busy night and people are paying attention to you bartending, you want to almost do it even harder and faster, and then when it's over like that, it's almost like, damn, I almost wanted it to be a slushy. I shook it so hard that it cracked up so much. Obviously, strain it off and don't want any ice chips changing your dilution. But
I would always say like ice chips are a sign of. I remember doing martinis early on, and people wanted those ice chips floating because they felt like it was you put the effort into it.
I have many philosophies on the martini. Being at so many steakhouses in my career, you get a lot of requests for that. It's like where you're at. You're at a steakhouse. You're going to have a steak. People like to start out with a martini there more than anywhere. And, if I get a vodka martini, that's it, just as vodka martini. Most places are opting out of vermouth now, right? Because at least in America, I know in the UK it'd be totally different. But in America, because of those bad years with vermouth and people weren't taking care of it, so I think it fell out of favor and people were like experiencing cocktails with stale, gross vermouth and said, oh, I don't like vermouth. So then it came out of the American like zeitgeist of cocktails, and now you really shouldn't put it in without a prompt, right? You would hope that you would say, here, we do make it with vermouth. I hope that's okay for you or whatever. But asking that from some servers is a lot. But what I wanted to say was if they say vodka shaken, or if they say vodka and it just says martini, vodka, Kettle One, for example, that I'm going to shake. Even though technically you should stir it, the person that wants that cocktail, it's just vodka in a glass. They're not drinking that because of the nuanced flavors and the translucency of that glass. They want to get fucked up for cheap, and and that's really, I believe that's it. Like, I don't believe that very many people are like, I'm such a vodka fan that I just want to shake it, or I just want it stirred in my glass with one olive. It's just, I don't come across those kind of people that often. But
I feel like I'm lucky. I skipped that part of my career.
Oh, well.
Like I said, never really worked in food spots, so I just never really worked in martini heavy bars.
That makes sense.
I think if the opportunity came up and I was going to give one to you, I'm going to maybe start by giving you a little sip of a tasty vermouth on the side. As much as I think that you're right in the world of vermouth going bad, I think there was also a moment where all our cordials were trash too.
Oh, yeah.
So you were getting the poorest quality vermouth that you could, and it was old. And you were using such a small amount of it that you'd never really get through it. I feel like, didn't James Bond call for extra dry martinis? And now all of a sudden it's the cool way to order it without that extra vermouth. But you start, the notes of honeydew on a Dolan Dry are delightful. If you haven't tasted one neat for a while, I would dig in. Find it. It's there, right? And you give somebody a little sip of it, and now all of a sudden maybe we're getting them on board, right? And let's give you like a couple of olives on the side, because I think they also want a snack. I feel like that might be part of the reason why we're getting it dirty, is because you want 2 or 3 olives next to it. I want a free bite to eat with this drink that I'm otherwers ordering.
A true aperitivo.
I just feel like, hey, maybe we just like express that lemon peel over it. Give you 2, 3 olives on the side. If you have some bar nuts, give them a little bit of that next to it. And now I think you can really turn that guest into somebody that might enjoy that vermouth, because, hey, you checked off on all the boxes, right? It's softer because you put some vermouth in it, or, versus maybe just leaning on olive juice. They're getting the aroma out of, say, that lemon peel, and they're getting the salty snack with it too. Yeah. So I feel like that would be of the,
that saltiness helps you too, right? Saltiness is going to encourage them to drink more.
Totally. And we're looking to open up your palate right now anyway, right? Like, we're looking to, to get ready for, say, that meal, even though maybe it's a little bit strong for an aperitivo. But let's face it, we wait till later in the day in the U.S. and we go hard.
And you're right about everything you said about that. And having not worked in a bar that's like martini centric, it's pretty astute and the correct, like the way I would hope that I get a martini served to me. And again, like, so now back to that conversation, if I get a gin martini request and there's nothing on it, just says gin martini, I am stirring that one. Why? What's the difference, right? Like, well, because the person that's ordering gin is a more, I don't want to say more discerning, at least with spirits, they might be, because I really do believe most places aren't doing it with vermouth. So when you get a vodka, they do want it as slushy and drinkable to just get to where they're trying to go. They like a certain amount of alcohol in their system to feel a certain way because they're trying to have this kind of a night. Whereas like the gin martini drinker isn't necessarily doing it for just pounding, alcohol back, and they care a little bit more about the botanicals, the nuance, especially if they're preferencing what gin they want and all this. And then now if I'm adding olive brine, that one, if it's my guest, I'm going to kind of make a judgment right away about like just the way they ordered it, the way they seem, if they're really comfortable, if they seem like they order it. And sometimes I'll say shaken or like, honestly, I ask everyone shaken or stirred, but because it's not my will that I'm trying to impose on you what I think should be the right way to do it. And since martinis are one of those things, like you like it the way you like it, it's like a 60-year-old that's ordering a martini. They like their martini the way they like it. They don't want, if they haven't had it with vermouth for 20 years, they're not really going to, on average, be susceptible to you telling them how to drink it, because they're like, I've been having this drink for 20 years, They don't really want to know like a better way to drink it, because you're kind of taking away the confirmation of, I've been having this cool drink for years. I tell them to wave the vermouth bottle in front of it, and that's kind of my joke every time, and make sure that you show it the vermouth bottle and then walk away, and it's like, you say that every time you go to a bar, don't you, But so no, I feel like there is a whole culture in how people like their martinis, and I've had that, like, it's, I always say, like, do you want it to have that sheen of ice or no? Like when someone's like, oh, I don't know, shaken or stirred, no one's ever asked me that. I'm like, well, do you like it with an icy top or not? And I'll tell you, the people that I say it like that, they go, ooh, I want the icy top.
You know, for me, the most powerful part of that, you know, the language you were just using is you said you're looking at your guest and you're making a judgment based on what you're looking at, right? And I think that, and let's just take ourselves out of our bartender shoes for a minute, and let's say that we're a guest and we speak a certain language about some stuff that's behind the bar as a bartender, but the guest maybe doesn't. So let's just say we speak two different languages, and the bartender or the guest wants to say something to you, and it's your job to interpret or translate what the words that they just said to you are with the information that you know about what's behind you. And I think that's the essential general exchange of everything we're doing. You know, if you asked somebody if they like their brisket cooked to 200 degrees, I mean, maybe they don't understand that collagen breakdown in a brisket doesn't happen till higher than medium rare. Maybe they don't know that it doesn't happen till significantly further on. But it's your job to serve them tender brisket, right?
I've never heard anyone say it like that, and you make it sound so damn smart.
I mean, that's what
Collagen
it
breakdown.
is.
I'm like, I understand, and I'm like,
Those are, I mean, they're, you know, that's my little bar. You know, we were talking about wood earlier. It's like my little slow cook barbecue background, right? I mean, I just enjoy cooking, but
God forbid you were in a restaurant place with all the back, like, because that's the other thing. When you have a restaurant behind you, you don't have to order in anything. You could be like, well, what do we have in the kitchen? And then you go and tinker in the kitchen with a bunch. You could just come out with a bunch of stuff that the kitchen uses and start making cocktails. And I'm like, I bet you, you know, knowing about collagen breakdown in your brisket.
Like, hey, like that's just how it works, right? There's no universal temperature for steak. It has to do with how hard the muscle's working. What's the fat content on the steak? How hard's the muscle working, right? And that's how we're going to determine, in my opinion, the best temperature to cook that particular piece of beef. But regardless of which, you don't have that conversation with this server that's coming and asking you how you want it to go down, right? So we're basically trying to interpret what in the world does this person want who's standing in front of me based on what it is they said. And you're using all the cues. I'm just basically trying to put it into a set of words that we're kind of able to wrap our head around. Is you're looking at this person that likes gin, and you're making an assumption that they like a more specific martini as a result of the fact that they were willing to order it with gin. And they say whatever they say. They say, I want it sweet, not sweet. It's kind of all comes back to that little, what's your dive bar order? Let me just ask you a question that I can just get to the bottom of real quick. I'm going to take this information. I'm going to translate it into what it is that I'm working with. And then hopefully the thing that I put in the glass in front of you is something that you maybe were unable to articulate to me unless I maybe didn't ask you a question that confuses you. You know, I ask you a question that confuses you, then now all of a sudden we're starting to talk about shutdown, right?
But you don't want to pester people.
How about I just give you this little sip of ginger beer that you know I tried really hard on? You taste it, and you know that I care, and maybe you're willing to answer a question or two that I'm hopefully not trying to intimidate you by. Nobody wants to say the wrong thing to a bartender. They might not even order a cocktail if they think that they're going to
They're getting judged? Is that what you mean?
Right? Yeah. Like, I mean, think about what that's like to be walking up to. I mean, you know, I guess it's what we do, so I'm not trying to say it like that, but you're walking up to the coolest person in the room, you know? I'm of the firm belief that, hey, like, Batman wouldn't be anything without Alfred.
Oh, man.
Right? And,
Absolutely.
like, that's what we are, yo. Like, we're Alfred. They're the coolest one in the room. Let's just be here to support them. How about we worry about the rest of the details and not really have to bug them about having to do another tune-up on the Batmobile here and there, right?
Alfred's more iconic than Robin for me. Yeah. I mean, come on. You got
the one that makes it all possible.
You know? And he out of nowhere will, you know, he'll back someone up and crack them with the cane, you know. Please talk about this special rum that you brought that you said was a gift, and I'd love to hear about it while I actually go get a second shaker glass.
Cool. So I guess for us, you know, so we're going to do probably another cocktail and then a neat pour.
I was going to say let's try the neat.
Okay.
So we can experience it and then try it in the cocktail or out.
So these are two separate things, right?
Yeah.
So what the cocktail I was hoping that we would make, it uses this Japanese rum. It's called Kiyomi. It's from Okinawa, fermented for the better part of 30 days. It's super funky. To me, Interestingly enough, because we were just talking about martinis unplanned, it's so funky that for me it tastes like a blue cheese stuffed olive. Like, it's wild, right? If you didn't know that it didn't come from Jamaica, you might not believe that it's even like a Japanese product. I think of Japanese products as being refined, harmonious, and that guy is wild. So that's why I kind of love it. I'm looking for that spirit to show up in this cocktail otherwise, right? So I'm hoping to make this little Kiyomi daiquiri. We got a couple dashes of umami bitters. It's I'm really only fortunate to have the people that are willing to work with me. This is a drink that one of my bartenders at Stray Pirate, Bria, makes. So that's really...
She created it?
This is her cocktail. It's not on the menu, but she uses it sometimes when a guest might want a really unique daiquiri. I love it. I love the spirit. I love what the environment that we've been able to build at Stray Pirate has allowed her to do. That's really what gets me going, right? That being said...
Can we try that by itself, too?
I recommend it. Honestly, I think it would make a phenomenal dirty martini sans olive juice if we had to go down that path. But I like it as a daiquiri.
Have you ever seen these neat glasses?
Yeah, I love them.
Okay, I was gonna hear about that, but I don't want to cut you off.
Back in the day, Hanya used to rep these. Yeah, she was, and I'll never forget. She would say that it was such a good glass that it ruined High West Campfire for her because it used to be this awesome blended spirit, and she said that
The glass made her realize
showed
how
off
bad
the
it was.
edges of the different spirits that were blended in the bottle. And I remember, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but she was kind of a little bit like, she's like, I feel like it kind of changed my ability to taste this spirit. It was so harmoniously blended, and in the glass, I can pick it apart so easily, right?
Yeah. I've had mixed reviews about it, but I do the Proof Awards every year, and this is the glass for the Proof Awards. And George, the creator, put a lot of thought into it and really tried to make it like an interesting product and make it make sense of why, for the way that the nose develops and the way that you smell things. There's different levels. Also, they updated the technique.
I was gonna say, they didn't used to have this much foot on the bottom.
Exactly. So yeah, this is like one of the first rounds that they made, and then this is the newer product, a little more heavy, a little more so you don't have to have your fingers touching it at all.
Yeah.
And then they made it to really let the nosing of it for this, the glass means more for the nosing, because a Glencairn, though this is picturesque and this is what people picture when doing a tasting, and it's honestly, it's a sexy glass, but the nose concentrates the alcohol. So if it's a high proof spirit that you're tasting, you're getting hit. So you have to come up here, whereas this, you smell from the middle out, and you get different aromas.
I feel like I can literally smell it from here.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, yo. You're picking this thing out of a daiquiri for sure. Honestly, on that note, like when you're talking about concentration of that alcohol, if I'm ever going to give it a alcohol a swirl, I'm almost always going to go for a quick blow. I'm just kind of looking to like loosen some of that out of the glass, right? Like if it's going to start concentrating there, I feel like Kenny Dayton told me that one time, but it gives me a little bit of ability to like, hey, we're opening it up a little bit, but I'm looking to get through it, and I want to know what's in this cup, right? I'm not just trying to sit here and put it on the counter for however long that's going to take till it opens up. So that's generally what I would do, but I 100% agree that if you start getting too aggressive with it, it's tough to smell. You'll ruin your ability to nose it before you even actually really have the ability to taste it, right?
Which spirit is this?
This is the Kiyomi.
Kiyomi.
It's funky.
It's funky. Like I said, I'm not, looking at other harmonious Japanese spirits. You're thinking about like Hakushu and Hibiki and all these awesome, refined, harmonious things, and I feel like I wouldn't have even thought they had it in them.
So as I'm about to start making this daiquiri, also another question I have is, do you go spirit then like other ingredients, or do you go where some people say cheapest ingredient first and then spirit last? I know that's kind of in the weeds, but
I feel like that's like my Academy of Fine Spirits and Service training, that my Francesco years. I'm definitely going syrup, sour, cordial, base.
In case you mess up, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too is if you make, if you put a little bit more rum or a little bit less rum in a daiquiri, you'll probably be okay. But if you ruin your base of like that sweet and sour, you're going to have a drink that's either too sweet or too sour, right? So before we even get there, if you were really being cautious, maybe you could even, dry taste it at that point and know whether or not you're on the right path before you even go down and add that base spirit in.
So I'm going to do 2-1-1 with this one. Right?
Maybe put a little piece of lime in there to
I'm
shake it with.
I have to at this point.
After all this, right? Hopefully it's...
Come on. I'm excited. I've never made one that way. And I asked that because I talked to a lot of people that make their daiquiri 2, 1, 3, and a 3/4 simple. Though when you said making your drink for you versus making it for like mass appeal, because like our palates are crazy probably by now, right?
Yeah.
It's like I like black coffee. A lot of that's not a. I mean, it obviously is like one of those things. As you get older, more people drink black coffee. When you're younger, you drink more, Starbucksy, vanilla infused stuff on average. I'm generalizing, but it seems like the bartender palate is a little more aggressive. So like when if I'm making a daiquiri for a bartender, maybe I'm gonna make it a little more astringent.
Yeah.
You're still enjoying that?
Yeah, I'm good with this. That Kiyomi's bone dry though, right? It'll take that amount of sugar.
Absolutely, and that's a good point because you were talking about the sweetness of rums.
Yeah,
this is definitely not a sweet rum.
I would have to think that there's little to no dosage in that product.
Ooh, dosage.
Dosage should be post sugar, right?
Yeah,
After.
A little sugar added. Real common in the rum world, right? Like a lot of different additives that are...
Isn't that a French term? Dosage?
Yeah.
Because they do that to champagne, right? That's
They do.
after they've done it, they add that, and then they let that bottle ferment, right? Isn't that where dosage comes from?
Yeah, cider too.
Cider?
Yeah, cider definitely gets it. But knowing that that's like, Normandy's apple territory, I would have to assume that they're French ciders. I'm not positive, but I would have to think that they're making cider if they're willing to turn around and make Calvados out of it.
It sounds French.
Yeah.
I'm using a jigger I never used before because my mise was lacking, and
Is it just mise? Or is mise en place like
mise en place? But shorthand is mise.
I don't know how that works.
That's how it works. It definitely works that way, Kyler. I mean, obviously, maybe not because all of our guests.
My mise. Oh, my mise over here.
I'm saying he knew exactly what I was saying. I know he does.
Well, just because he knows what you mean doesn't mean that he's using the right terminology.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't say it that way either. I'm just playing.
I was gonna say, God damn it.
I also find mise en place to be a silly. I understand the purpose of it, and I think it's silly. Every time it comes up, I just think it's silly. You're
silly.
The term or the concept?
The term, the actual word itself.
But conceptually, you have
Makes total sense, yeah.
to sign up for it if you're making...
Of course,
you're making stuff, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. But to say mise en place, it'd be like you're just adding a fluffy, silly word out.
Well, that's why I said mise. I feel like we're back.
Sillier.
And around we go. Mise en place is an easy way of saying, do you have all your shit set up right?
Yeah.
To me, that makes sense. That
also makes...
That's a much nicer way. I was like, did you check your mise? That's constantly said.
Yeah, you don't want to be in the weeds at your aunt's house, do you? God.
Bruh.
Did you check your aunt's mise?
That sounds weird.
Now it sounds weird, right?
Yeah, way to make it weird, man.
Okay.
Do you have that umami bitters over there?
Ooh.
It's here somewhere.
Let me think.
Oh, here it is, over on the...
So first, we're gonna throw in.
What are some challenges that you've had
wedges?
opening that spot? Do you feel like you got a lot of traction early on? Because Main Street gets a lot of foot traffic, and you're one block off, right?
Drops per cocktail.
Maybe we're gonna have to call it Bria, but let's start with 5.
5 drops.
Yep. Honestly, we're real fortunate that like that tiki tropical rum world, it's there's a lot of built-in clientele that comes with it. Plus, in the world of us just having a blast with drinks, people are looking to try something new. They just don't want to feel like they're dumb when they're doing it. And so when they're looking at this menu and there's items that are, some unique, fun flavors, but maybe not too complicated, I think that it's easier for a guest to decide to try something new in this environment, maybe compared to some other ones that I've been in. Where
do your people come from? Where do your clients come from? Do they just how do you get people to your establishment?
Honestly, internationally, the tiki movement is wild. People are just looking for it, and there's not a whole lot. And I guess before I go any further down this path, I, for sure want to thank the other tiki bars that are in town. Adam Raines, open arms. There was no gatekeeping whatsoever. He just kind of helped us right along that path. Any questions that I had for him along the way, I have to definitely tip my hat to being able to stand on the shoulders of what these folks in town have been able to build for us. I've been a long-term fan of Frankie's, and I could text message Adam Raines and ask him a question or two, or Nick over at Golden, same way, right? And that's an amazing thing to feel like we're part of this, this brotherhood of we're just looking to share some stuff with some people, and these guys are down to help us do that task, right?
I do have to highlight, like, to your point, Adam Raines really is, and he's won like some serious hospitality awards and stuff like that too. Like, he's not just like a bartender; he's a man of the people.
Yeah.
And a character and like a personality, but the no gatekeeping, which is a big issue that I do not like about some bartenders that I've come across in my life, is that they don't want to tell you their secrets. And I've been lucky enough to have been given a lot of secrets. Like, I cut my peels the way Kane, that my director at Vetri, taught me to cut, because I was like, that's the dopest peel I've seen that I can mass produce effectively, consistently.
A la minute, if you will.
A la minute. And
yeah.
and I asked him, I was like, why do you give all your cool techniques away without even thinking about it? And he's like, if I'm giving you a technique, you should know about me, and I hope that I'm already working on the next thing.
That's it right there. I'm going to keep moving it forward. I'm going to get it to the next one. If I give you a technique, you better keep fertilizing that dirt, because I'm going to keep taking it forward, right? And if we look forward in a year, maybe we'll have a conversation and you'll tell me that this is the direction you took it in and I took it in this other direction, and we'll have that conversation. But I think without a doubt, I think maybe the idea of somebody that doesn't want to share, that's the person that's not looking to grow.
Yeah. I really am glad you brought up gatekeeping, because that's the thing. It's like, sharing your information is how you've gotten to the level that you're like, you should be proud because you can share the information. When you can't talk about what you know, then you really haven't learned it.
Yeah.
That's how you learned it, is that you can teach it to someone else.
Also, with something like that, why are you afraid of someone stealing your idea? How hard is it to open a bar? You give somebody an idea, and then they got
easy.
To go. They have to
easy.
Go. They have to. No. I'm saying no. It's hard.
Oh, okay.
It's difficult. So you can give somebody the exact how-to do something. They still have to go execute it. They have to go put in that hard work, and then they have to decide that they're not going to give up easily. And most people just give up as soon as stuff gets hard.
Yeah.
So like cutting a peel like that takes time. So yeah, you're gonna have this dope looking peel, and if you don't take the time to learn it and be able to do it on the fly, you're not gonna have competition. You could teach people the most beautiful things, and then why are you worried about them stealing it? And especially something like the tiki bars around town, they're pretty spread out for the most part, and you're not stepping on anybody else's feet down in your location, right? Everybody else there has kind of got their own little niches.
Hey, without a doubt, I'll tell people that if you want to get one of the best Mai Tais in town, you go hit Jammyland. It's walking distance. Their collection of spirits is phenomenal. Go get it, right? And then obviously you get in your Uber, go jump to your other spots, go hit Red Dwarf, Golden, Frankie's. They're all great. But that's one of the best parts about being in the neighborhood, is it's a really, no pun intended, coming from a pirate ship bar, is like it's a, rising tides float, raise all ships, right? And we're really lucky to have that be the case.
To our final cocktail before we taste an amazing special rum.
Cheers.
Cheers. Tater, thank you so much for joining us. Kyler, thank you as always for being on the ones and twos.
Man, this glass is delicate. I don't know
it's delicate and it's gigantic.
Is...
Like, that's a typical proportion, but there's a huge collar on that. Lovely. I was actually a little nervous because that jigger it's a weird one, because I'm used to a Japanese jigger that's 2 in 1. And this one's like, I was like, is this 2.5 or 3? And it's like, I'm dumping it. And so I'm hoping that I had it on, like it is 2, but it tastes right.
So something I was going to say a minute ago that I think is a big value for the way that I might want to write a menu. or develop some ingredients, right? And I don't want to have a guest feel too intimidated to order something that's on the menu. I'm generally going to go maybe 75% of the ingredients in a drink are things that you know, and maybe 25% are not. So I'm going to bring up this drink that I was talking about earlier, the Swig and Berries, right? It has a nice little...
it makes you chuckle.
Nice little ring to it, right? So it has vodka and strawberry, rhubarb, lemon, rosewater, and aquavit. Who knows what aquavit is? I mean, I guess maybe we do, but the guest might not. So they start going down this road and they're like, hey, strawberry, rosewater, rhubarb, this all sounds great. I'll tolerate the aquavit that's in there. They don't have to worry about the idea that I found this old world dessert recipe for caraway cream next to strawberries and the fact that I know that caraway pairs well with strawberries. But that's an awesome little combination where they get that drink and they're not drinking strawberry lemonade.
How do you get your rhubarb in there? Because I did a cocktail with rhubarb, and it's a rough thing to work with.
It's definitely really fibrous. We use Gaffard rhubarb as a cordial.
Okay.
But considering the amount of ginger we break down, if we wanted, if we felt like that was the path, there's like, you got to pick your battles, right? Sure. Plenty of ones we do. That doesn't happen to be a battle that we choose to fight.
I don't think it's also a locally sourced thing that you're going to find around here. Isn't that something?
The only time I ever came across it was when I lived in Canada.
Yeah, my grandma used to do rhubarb pie in Montana.
Yeah, that makes sense. Must be like a cold weather fruit, right? But then, yeah, like we're sitting here, we use that Svol, the Swedish variety. So it gets a little bit of lemon, a little bit of dill. Caraway isn't quite as intense on that specific product, but it leans right into it. And so somebody gets a drink that's a little bit more complex than maybe they realized they were signing up for, but they're kind of shooting down that path because there's these other ingredients that they feel really comfortable with.
Well, that'd be like this cocktail.
Totally, right? It's a daiquiri,
but it's got
definitely sounds like it's easy going, right?
It's got that funk to it that's going to be something.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bria.
Yeah, thank you, Bria, at Stray Pirate. Check her out. She's awesome, clearly. And I do have to say that touch of brininess and that extra funk, man, that's just, what is it about like getting older and more in like your palate gets just more experience that it's like, bring me the funk, like make it weird, Oh
yeah.
Like it's like, oh, is it weird? Cool, I'm gonna love it. That's been kind of my thing. It's like Amaro. I take pride in liking like astringent, aggressive Amaro. Don't get me wrong. There's a couple that are even past like where I like, but it's one of those things. I'm like happy that my palate has in some ways died to where it's not as sensitive to sugar. Like it's sensitive to sugar, but it's like bitter doesn't bother me at all. It could be one of the more bitter cocktails you've ever made, and I'm gonna be like, nice.
Have you had a drink at Amari over in the Uncommons?
No.
Highly recommend it.
I went there for a seminar, but I've never enjoyed the experience there.
There's a bartender curated Amari list. It's delightful. Without a doubt, I had stuff that I didn't even know existed when I went.
Is it better than Monzu with Chris? Well, Chris Militillo helped make it, but he's not there anymore. But it's Chef Gio it's obviously his concept, and he's a wine aficionado and knows his Amari. But is it better than Monzu's? Because they, for the longest time, to me, they had the best Amaro collection in town. Brimari's catching up. We're getting there. It takes a little while to collect all those really cool older stuff and the really interesting stuff that's not found in America. But if you've been to Monzu, can you tell me if there's because they're both obviously it's called Amari. It's going to have quite a collection.
Yeah. I feel like when I went to Monzu, the focus was also a little bit more maybe on the food and the pizza. So I can't say that I dug in quite as deep when I went there.
Man, if you like Amari, then you'll love it. If you like Amaro in general,
yeah,
you will love Monzu's collection because before Amari existed, the restaurant Amari, they were, I'm talking 60 bottles. And cool stuff. Like obviously the normal ones you see all the time, Averna, Campari, if you want to call Campari and Amaro, Montenegro and all those household names. But then they have you want to find some cool, interesting stuff. You go to these bars like Amari and Monzu, and you get a cool experience. But
I feel like I've been drinking Montenegro for years, but all of a sudden, I think that note of rose is just really standing out to me on that more and more. I feel like we kind of think about it maybe having a little bit of orange backbone, but just throwing it out there. I don't know why, but now that I taste it, I feel like that's my signature taste where I can pick it out of a cocktail is that little rose note that's existed in it.
If we weren't going to taste this this rum for our final taste, I would say let's go in and experience Montenegro. I'll make sure to reference this moment on a future podcast, though, and because I can't picture the rose, but I also talk Amari for like all the time. And if I'm now that and there is a part of like where someone gives you an idea, and now you're like, oh yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
You know, but it is one of those things. You're like sometimes you just don't know how to describe something. But now I'm going to be searching for it in there, and I'm kind of excited to experience Montenegro again, which I've done again like 100 times. But
yeah, without a doubt, right?
You know.
I feel like it's been hanging out on my back bars for 10 years, and then next thing you know, I'm just tasting something new about it. But I feel like that goes right in the idea of what you're saying, how we're looking for new flavors and funkier things, and our taste buds are developing.
Exactly. That's just to me. It's like part of growing up is your palate can take different things and enjoys different things much differently.
Cool.
So on this,
Gonna go for a little neat pour, a little toast to Uncle Stu here.
a toast to Uncle Stu. Now, please talk about this bottle. Talk about obviously it's very special.
So kind of wrapping it all up together. My folks were born in 1952, both of them. Mom did too. She used to make some cocktails. Obviously had some passion for a Mai Tai, being so upset about about blue curacao being the only thing she could find in the 90s to make one. This rum was...
I can't be the one to crack and pour. It's
Yeah,
such
I
a
know.
special bottle. Sorry.
We're just hoping to not break the cork on the way out, right? Distilled in 1952. It spent 30 plus years in a barrel. Depending on exactly where I read. Some people said 33, 34. Some people said 39. Bottled in 1991. So that means that Uncle Stu must have been holding on to this thing for the better part of 30 years.
Damn.
And when I went over, I kind of got fortunate. You know, the family essentially gave me first crack at some interesting things. I scored like old oxidized bottle of Dubonnet and his old bottle of Chartreuse and a bunch of other awesome things. But when I saw this, my eyes lit up. I didn't even really know what it was that I was looking at, but here we are. It's Clement. They say it's some of the oldest Clement from the last distillery, not the place where it's currently made.
That's incredible.
I might need a pocket knife for this bad boy.
I'm blown away at the level.
Thank you, sir.
I'm blown away at the level of appreciation that I see, and I'm specifically picturing my barback Andrew at Primare, who really cares. And if you talk to him about one of the whiskeys he mentions to you, he's going to say a lot about it. He's going to know. Wow, I can tell just the body of that. It looks like it has a great.
I think when you
I can
start
smell that
getting
from
into
here.
like that, post 20 some odd year scene, I'm pretty sure that the barrel starts to break down. I think it's like cellulose in the barrel, and you definitely start getting sweetness that leads in. One of my favorite spirits I ever tasted was the I think it's Eric Bordelais Calvados. You can actually taste the Brettanomyces in the spirit, which I feel like I only normally taste from, say, an wild mixed fermentation beer.
Calvados is apple, right?
It is. It's French Normandy apple brandy, but it's another one similar to cognac, to where it can only last in the barrel till it gets to 80 proof. You can't let it sit there any longer, otherwise you no longer have the spirit. But I think when you start getting past that point, I'm under the impression, and again, no expert, but I'm under the impression that once the barrel starts to break down,
No expert.
some sugar comes in.
He knows the smell of certain yeast.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, Brettanomyces smells. Yeah, it's got a note of Britannia. You know what I mean? The encyclopedia.
Yeah. Yeah. Little note of
Oh,
excitement.
fucking, I noticed a bookie quality to it.
Dude, this is cool.
This is awesome. This is definitely the coolest thing someone's brought on this podcast to show us by far, and I'm blessed. And cheers to Uncle Stu.
Thank you. Yeah.
And God rest his soul. And Wow, thank you, dude. This is freaking
This
cool.
morning I texted my aunt to make sure that he was never actually a bartender. But no, he never was. He joined the Navy at a young age. Was always just a super enthusiast. But, man, to have that kind of taste to pick this stuff up when he did and have it in his collection.
I hate to burn our younger viewers. There is not going to be a generation as impressive as that generation. I'm sorry. You know, for just what those people had to go through of that generation, that age, the time, the tribulation. We have things we complain about, silly things now compared to what they had to deal with on a fear-based like lifestyle, like everything. And then to not have the Google at your fingertips to every time you have a question, you have an answer. Someone to be intelligent at this time that was born, 85 years ago.
1931, yo.
That to have the wisdom that he had, I can just tell his wisdom by the book, the notes, and all that. And again, that's not even his field. That is something that I think is lost on this like my generation included. That you just don't see people involved like that anymore because we have Google. Oh, if I have a question, I'll look it up in the moment, But then it was like, oh, I take an active interest in something and I've chose to buy the books and take the notes and read the books and then read the books again and then read my notes and then read the book again.
And practice it.
And that to me is the epitome of an impressive behavior and way to be, So cheers to Uncle Stu again. Like, that's really cool.
You know what? I feel like this has to have been from some French oak, right? I feel like I'm scoring some brandy cognac sort of notes from it, and I would have to think that came from that.
I haven't tasted yet. I'm still on the nose because the nose it's rich and enveloping.
It's fascinating, right? You can tell some oxygen seeped into the barrel over some years, right? Almost a little mushroominess.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to finish this with you off camera.
Yep.
Let's thank you, Uncle Stu, for making this the most special podcast that I've had. Thank you, Tater, for making this a very special podcast and one that I feel like I've learned quite a bit. So thank you, bro.
Yeah, let's
go to Barmania.
Yeah, let's go check out Barmania.
We're headed to Barmania right now.
Yeah.